Hi, friends, and welcome to the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, also known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I may be an old dog, but I'm always trying to learn new tricks. That's why in each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson, program, or activity they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. As a good friend likes to say, we're better together. So I hope this podcast will help school librarians connect with and learn from each other. The opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. And because school librarians always strive to be good digital citizens, I cite sources when using material that is not my own. Without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, we are back. We are kicking off the new year and I'm excited. I've got a new friend to talk to today and I'm very excited because Lindsey is here with some really interesting thoughts and ideas for us. But I'm going to not get it too far ahead of myself. I'm going to say, Lindsey, welcome. And why don't you take a second to tell folks about who you are and where you are.
Well, hello, Steve. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast. My name is Lindsey Kimery, and I am coordinator of library services for Metro Nashville Public Schools. So this is a role that I have been in for 5 years, and it's a role that puts me in the central office, and I'm able to support 130 librarians and 40 library clerks through this opportunity, which I greatly enjoy. And prior to this, I spent 20 years in a middle school, first as a 7th grade language arts teacher, and then 17 as the librarian.
Nice, man. I'm middle school, ELA, into the library. That's where I came from too. So we are on the same path.
Love those middle schoolers.
They are something, I tell you. Before we got started, we were talking a little bit about the middle schoolers and just sort of how they just never know what you're going to get with a middle schooler, but you got to love it.
Absolutely not. Every day is new and exciting and interesting.
Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of curious, how did you end up in school librarianship? Like, what was your path to the library?
So starting out as an English teacher, one of my favorite activities with my class was just our read alouds and our novel studies. And at the end of the year, I remember having the class just gather their chairs. Let's just pull our chairs in close, semicircle, whatever order, doesn't matter. And I'm just going to read a book to you. And that's what we did for the last couple weeks of school.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that was just such a fun time to share story and to discuss along the way. And I saw the impact that it had on the students. And it made me think, what could I do that is English adjacent for a school that more so focuses on, the power of reading and just spreading that love and supporting all of the students. And I had never once in my life previously thought about being a school librarian.
Yeah.
But here I am. And it was like the best decision ever. And I'm so glad that I did it because I was able to, to support an entire school, staff and students for those 17 years. And just each year had a different little flavor of its own, but just being able to just really connect and provide that leadership with reading, with literacy, just was so enjoyable to me.
Yeah. Oh, we are so much on the same wavelength here. It's great. I love it.
Awesome.
So you took your hard-earned experience in the library and now you've taken that up to the next level. And so now you're kind of helping to share some of the wealth across the different schools and the different libraries. That's great.
Yeah, and it gives me such a unique perspective because with 130 librarians, that's 159 schools all across Metro Nashville. And each school is very unique because each school has a unique administrator, unique staff members, unique librarian and students. And so each school has its own kind of set of needs. And it is such an honor to get to work alongside the librarians and help them, be a thought partner, be a coach, come in and provide physical support, just anything that they need to help them be successful in supporting their students and staff.
That's awesome, man. That's
Mhm.
great administration. That's great supervision when you've got someone who is there to really do whatever they can to make sure that you're getting the job done, like whatever that takes. And I really appreciate that. We had sort of conversed previously just about, where you were at and what you were doing and just talking through some ideas. And I was really impressed with how thoughtful you were about the ways that you can offer that support, because you've gone from, in my mind, the school library is the place in education to be, because like you said, you're working with all the students, all the teachers in the whole building. And you've sort of taken that to even the next level, and you're spreading it out to all the schools and all the school librarians, and you're supporting them so thoughtfully. And I hope that they appreciate, I'm sure they appreciate all the support that you give them, because it really just sounds amazing.
Well, it's really cool to be in a district that has a role like mine, and I'm fortunate to have a small team. So I have 3 other individuals on my team. So a training and development specialist, Tommy Sharp, a district librarian, Alyssa Littrell, and we have our administrative assistant, Clay Jeffries, who's actually a former student of mine from my middle school days. Which is great. So the 4 of us do whatever we can to support this larger team. And I came from a district that didn't have someone like me meeting my role in the central office. So the librarians were completely on our own. So I know the difference, and I'm just grateful that there are a handful of districts in Tennessee with a role like this. I think it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It does seem like there is a real scarcity of a role like that to help kind of keep everybody on the same page across different buildings. But when a district realizes like, oh, this is an area where we can really just do so much, we can get so much accomplished, it's great when they recognize that and provide that support like you're able to provide. That's really awesome.
That's right. Because 2 of our district goals, number 1 is literacy.
Nice.
And then a second goal is just diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think having this position in our central office just helps further tie librarians into being able to meet the needs in literacy and in providing, equitable spaces and equally accessible spaces, and just how that all works together, not only in their own school, but just across the district as a whole, just really help further elevate, further help us reach, the goals that we are trying to achieve.
And I think you just gave us a real great piece of ammunition to put in our toolkits to go to our own administration and say, hey, here's a reason why we should be thinking about this as a position. Here's a reason why we should have this. Man,
That's right.
We're gonna definitely put a little an asterisk on that one so that we make sure we come back to that. That's great. So usually we talk about a lesson or a program or an activity, but you and I were going to maybe take a little bit of a step back from that, because in talking, we had kind of circled around a couple of different ideas, and you had pointed out something that I think is so incredibly important, and something that it hadn't really occurred to me before, but you put it so perfectly. So I want to let you kind of just run with the ball a little bit here, and maybe you want to just kind of lead us into where we're going and talk through a little bit of where we're going here.
Hey, well, with all the ideas that we tossed back and forth, something that really stood out was just kind of working around the barriers to access. And so in thinking about that some more, I came up with just flexibility and how that can be a superpower of a school librarian. I know that as a former middle school librarian, that is one of the ways, just being flexible was one of the ways that I kept the library just at the forefront of just high importance in my school and of relevant. And so it is just sort of breaking out of just what we traditionally think of as, we go to the library to get books, to get resources, to go and see the librarian. But how as the librarian, can we bring the books and resources to the class and, get out into the school building so that we can provide the services at the point of need? Because I see a lot in my district, the point of need is stuck in class. And we have very scripted curriculum sometimes. And so no students are allowed, out of class. Maybe we're in the rotation for certain grade levels, but not for other grade levels. So scheduling really can become a challenge. So, how do we manage all the different barriers sometimes that we're given? And it's just part of being part of a school community. We know that learning is being prioritized, and sometimes student free time is very, very minimal. And the more that we can be flexible and think outside the box as needed, it's certainly not the solution that we're seeking, but it's a tool that we need to have at the ready to deploy.
And I think you raised sort of an interesting point too, the idea that there's sort of this tension for school librarians, because the library is the place where your resources are, and the library is the place you want people to come so they can take full advantage of all the resources. But like you said, sometimes that's not possible for some classes, some teachers, some students. So then we're sort of in the position of, what can I bring that will at least do some of the outreach? Like, maybe they're not going to have access to every tool, every resource, every item, but maybe we can cherry pick out some stuff. And I love the idea. You put it as flexibility is your superpower. And I absolutely love that thought, because, we all know school librarians are superheroes, but I think that flexibility element of it is so incredibly important. So we've got to be flexible in how we think about ourselves and our spaces, but also how are we being flexible in our connections? So that's a great point. I really appreciate you bringing that up. So we've got this really important idea, and you've actually got several different elements about different barriers that we face, and you've listed them out really nicely here. I'm going to jump a little bit here, but we're talking about interruptions to the schedule and time constraints and rotations, and just there's all these things that can kind of hem us in and make it real tough to deliver the stuff that we know we have, that we know would be so great, but you've got to make that connection between the stuff and the people who need the stuff. That's not always the easiest thing to do. So you've got some great ideas here. Do you want to maybe share off some thoughts on how we can engage that flexibility a little bit?
Definitely. And I think something that happened in our recent history just really forced our hand to think outside the box, and that was the pandemic. We've got thousands of books sitting in these libraries collecting dust. I see that the school is organizing pickups for different materials for students. Could I make the books available? How can I? And so many of us deployed, hold systems, and we got those books out there. And so what I've seen is a lot of leftover from that particular time period. I see a lot of my librarians still doing a mobile checkout, for example. So I'll talk more about that in a moment. But one of the things I think that is so important to do, obviously synchronously and asynchronously, is just book joy. The librarian is the number one literacy leader in the building, in my opinion. You are reading the most books. You are reading what the kids are reading. You're ordering. So you are the most knowledgeable about what is going to most appeal to students and support them in their journey of becoming a reader and a lifelong reader. And so think of all the
taking out that sort of grading element too, that the ELA teachers, as a longtime ELA teacher, like, I get it. There's pressure. There's this feeling of accountability, and we've got to make sure that if the kids are going to read it, we've got to use that time, so they've got to be tested on it. And so I worry that we press some of the joy of learning out of kids with some of the things we feel like we need to be accountable for as educators. And that's one of the things I love about the school library, is it takes so many of those accountability pressures of grading away, so that we can just be there for the kids to engage them with, like, book joy as one particular area,
That's right. Yeah. So think about all the different opportunities that you might have in your school to share books, whether that is coming from you talking with students in the hall during hall duty, or it is, you have commandeered a lone bulletin board that no one ever seems to update. You're going to make it your own. You've claimed some territory.
Absolutely.
There's all kinds of possibilities. So find, what works for you, but never let a moment go by, even if it's just you're working with a class on learning how to log into the computer. Now, it might be a kindergarten class. As you're doing so, always start out with a book talk or two, because you never want to bypass an opportunity to give them some ideas about what to read.
That's a great idea. Actually, have not been doing enough book talks lately. And today I was sitting at my desk, and the way our library is set up, the kids pass through on their way to classes, and they're walking right by me. And there's a display of all brand new books right there, and they're walking right past it. I'm like, I need to make this connection. So like I've said it in my head, starting tomorrow, I need to actually, during passing, going to just pick up a book, and I'm just going to book talk it for whoever's walking by until somebody takes that book. And then we're going to book talk the next one that's on the stack, because we got to make the kids, we got to help them make those connections, because they don't even know. They don't know what they don't know. So we can help them see those things. But that's a great point. Anytime we've got them.
Yeah, I've had the privilege to see Mr. Shue speak many times, met him personally many times. And I always think about, what would Mr. Shue do with faced with, the scheduling issues, this, that, and the other. I think he would find a way.
Absolutely.
So put on my Mr. Shue hat.
Yeah. The book joy. Never short on book joy, that one.
That's right. Exactly.
So you had mentioned that some of your school librarians are still doing mobile checkout. I'm so interested. Can you tell us a little bit about how that continued or
Sure.
continued?
Yeah. So it all stems from just being faced with more scripted curriculum and just less time for students to come to the library. We tend to think of maybe the ELA teacher as our most natural partner,
right,
in the school setting, because we're both trying to accomplish the same thing and support students with literacy. In my district anyway, there's less and less time for the librarian and the ELA teacher to work together. And so it's not like the ELA class is coming for their library day,
Right.
So the librarian is either looking to partner with the social studies, science teachers, kind of looking for other opportunities, or it may be the kind of thing where, ELA can come to the library every, once in 9 weeks or every month.
Right.
But there are smaller opportunities more frequently for the librarians, maybe curate a cart of books, or pull holds for students, or maybe send down a menu of ideas, maybe just genres even, for students to circle. And then that gives the librarian some direction on curation. But it's more about bringing the books to the kids to have just a mini checkout time in class. And, we have our laptop, we have our scanner, so we put that on the cart too, and then we're off down the hall and rolling into a classroom, and then we're in business, getting books into the hands of kids.
And so, I don't know. Do you know Melissa Corey? She's amazing, and she does these amazing visual book lists. And I am still, for like 2 years now, I've been saying I'm going to make visual book lists, but it's near the top of my list now. So it's like it's going to get done soon. But what a great material that would be. And like you're saying, you could take one of those, circulate them to class, circulate them to the kids, have kids pick some stuff out, and then you've got like, okay, I know what you want, let me bring it to you, instead of you having to come and get it.
Yes, and it just saves time, and it's it supports administrators' kind of preferences on not having kids in the hallway in the middle of class. There's always so many things we're trying to work around. But I've also seen, along the lines of mobile library, teachers who will build that into a hall duty. Perhaps, their morning duty, they're in the hallway. And so they bring a cart of books with them and have their little laptop and scanner ready to go. And they're checking out books, while they're doing hall duty. Or perhaps testing has closed the library for several weeks at a time. And so on Monday, we're going to be in the A hall, and Tuesday, we're going to be in the B hall. We have sort of a little schedule, and, where's Waldo? Find the librarian and check out books. So
Love
it's
it.
just the librarians being creative and trying to respond to, what the cards they've been dealt,
Yeah.
and get books into the hands of kids no matter what.
I love the pop-up library. I mean, that is just, it's pretty easy to do. And you've already got a pretty good sense of what's going to circulate. So you can kind of put together a cart of stuff that you're pretty sure will move. And like you said, you just bring your mobile stuff, you get set up in a spot, pick that spot in the hall, the wide spot or the traveled spot, and you're good to go. You just talk books to kids. That was actually how I ended up getting my physical space in my current school, because we didn't have a physical library space for a long time. And I did a couple of pop-up libraries, and the administrator who became the principal the following year was like, that was awesome. Like, the kids, I was sitting there just saying, like, who likes sports? Who likes football? You like football? Here you go. Here's a book. And just checking stuff out to the kids in the halls. And it was amazing, because when they can have that physical hands-on experience with a book, it makes such a huge difference for kids. So that pop-up can be the thing that may spark that one kid who maybe otherwise would be picking something up.
That's right.
Love it.
And, we live in a world where there's a lot of convenience.
Yes.
And I think kids respond really well to that. And we want to make it as easy for them as possible.
Right.
And some people, I know it can be a little uncomfortable, because perhaps it, the process, the whole checking out process could be compromised. Something doesn't get checked out properly. But I believe it was Donald Miller who said it best, is I'd rather lose a book than a reader. And I 100% agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, these are awesome ideas. I love this. I think you've also got something about book baskets. Now, talk to me a little bit about, is this a program that your school librarians are doing?
So very unofficially, the way that I've seen book baskets work would maybe primarily be in our elementary grades.
Okay.
So perhaps this would be a good solution to consider for those where you're in the rotation, maybe for 3 grades, but you don't really get a chance to see the other 2 grades very much. And so it is sort of taking big, I don't know, are they egg crate baskets, big crates, and just curating for that class. Maybe it's a first grade class or whatever. So we curate books for them, take them the basket. And as the librarian, I would check those books out to that particular teacher, if anyone's worried about the logistics.
Right.
And, students would get to read books from the basket throughout the week. And then, maybe the teacher puts them all back in the basket, sets them outside the door. I come get them, change them out. I've also seen this work for maybe there's a time when a librarian is on a leave of absence for a couple of weeks. And that's maybe not a situation in which a school provides a substitute, and it's often hard for someone to sub for the library because you've got to know the circulation system, and, it requires a lot of technical training. And so I have also seen a librarian create book baskets for each classroom. And then at the end of the week, it's just the classroom swap baskets. And, it's a Band-Aid solution. But again, it's being flexible, it's being creative, just thinking outside the box. Is there going to be a book misplaced? I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Will it turn up? Most likely, because it's been in the classroom. So we check the shelves, it'll turn up.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world.
And that would be a pretty low stress thing to set up. Like if you had, let's say 4 classes, each one gets a crate, and then they just rotate them for a month.
Right.
Like that's a month's worth of baskets that are all done.
That's right.
That's an easy. And when I saw book baskets, my first thought was actually I'd seen somebody else who does them almost like a subscription box from the library.
Yes.
And kids can sort of like sign up for like, I want a genre, like I want sci-fi books. And so you just put like 3 or 4 sci-fi books in a pack that kid picks up, and they can kind of check out or hang on to. You check them all out to the kid, but they hang on to the ones they want. They return the ones they don't. And that's another kind of fun way to maybe and get the kids almost subscribing to the library in a way, like if you,
that's right.
we can do this every month. We can do this every 2 weeks, whatever is going to work for the kid. And that way, and it might even be just the ideas just keep popping into my head as we're talking this through. Might be a great way to circulate some of the stuff that maybe doesn't circulate as much. Like if you know that the kid's into sci-fi, okay, here's like one that I know circulates well, and here's a couple that maybe are worth a look. And that's definitely, some of your readers are going to pick those up and go, oh, wow, this is awesome, even though they may not be the high circulation items usually. Huh.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I think it was Shannon McClintock Miller, maybe, who started that subscription idea.
Love it.
I do remember that. Yeah, and I think, so many of the apps we use nowadays to consume, digital media, curate ideas for us. So it's the same with books, except the librarian is the, helping generate or find the algorithm based on the students' interests.
Right, absolutely. Well, and speaking of digital, I mean, I believe that leads right into the next point that you were going to mention. So what are you thinking? What are your thoughts on digital access?
Well, sometimes, we just assume anymore that, we're now, 25 years as of yesterday into the 21st century. And so we just assume that our school libraries are not only offering print materials, but also ebooks and digital audiobooks. And so it always surprises me when I hear someone say, I don't use any of my budget, to buy ebooks or digital audiobooks. And so I'm always curious about why. And I believe most districts now are 1-to-1.
A lot
thanks to the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it's rare when they're not. And so I think, well, how do we bring the library to this device and help the students have a way to know how to access the library? Let's say the scheduling is a barrier. They can't get to the library as much as they would like, but they still have to have, a book to read in class, making sure that they have some ebook and digital audiobook options. And I know more than ever in the last few years, I really went from being kind of a print reader to being an audiobook listener. And so to me, having audiobook options are super important. Then also I have a child with ADHD, and every time he has a book to read for class, he has to listen to it as well. Like he prefers that. So we have the print option, we locate the audiobook option. So I think, it's another way that we are thinking about how to serve the needs of all of our students. Talking with, the special ed or exceptional ed teachers, and talking about just, what would help your kids be most successful.
Well, and there's so much research now that shows how much audio can support textual readings, and really not just for students who have special needs, but for all the students. So that's an area I've been trying to build up, is make sure that I've got the audio versions of our classroom text so that the students and the staff hopefully can take advantage.
That's right.
Because as an example, our 8th graders do A Christmas Carol and they read the original Charles Dickens, which is like, that language is pretty dense. Like it's good, but it's dense, especially for 7th or 8th graders. Like that's a lot. But being able to hear it and hearing someone who can read it smoothly, and even if you don't pick up every word, you're able to get so much from context, from intonation, and the way, the person is able to make the sentence flow. So it's such a great structural support. And so many of our teachers play the audio of that. And I'm like, why don't you play the audio of everything that you guys read? Because that would be just going to add that extra layer for the kids that it's going to be helpful for. It's going to be helpful for all of them, really. So why wouldn't you?
So valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. We do need to think more about our digital collection as part of the collection. Sometimes it's easy to neglect because we don't see it maybe, but it's there. It should be part of where we're going.
Yes, and families appreciate knowing what options they have to support their student. And
That's true too.
if they can get anything, any sort of support with resources from their school library without having to go purchase them themselves or seek out public library options, it just ties them even further to the school community. And just, I think ultimately it helps you as the librarian.
Yeah, it's a nice little piece of advocacy to say,
yeah,
we've got this thing that supports your student. Yeah.
For sure.
I'll tell you, I love we got Accessit as our catalog system a couple of years ago, and it ties our Mac and VIA right into the catalog. So if students look stuff up, they see both physical and digital copies, and then with one click from the catalog, they can open up the digital copy without having to go into a different system.
Yes.
So smooth, makes it so easy for the kids. Like, it's great. Yeah, really been loving that.
Love that.
But as you point out, like, that's not just the students that we're helping, it might be the parents that we're helping with that as well. So there's so many elements here that maybe it's easy to neglect because like we don't always see them. So we're not necessarily always thinking of that. But that's I'm so glad you brought that up. Man, this is why I love having conversations with you, because you're always getting me thinking about things that hadn't really popped into my head before. This is so great. So we're collaborating sort of with our students and our parents. And I'm kind of bringing that in because that is your next point. I love, for those who, you guys can't see this, but Lindsey did this amazing outline of the kind of the high points that she wanted to bring up. And they just flow together so naturally and smoothly as we're having this conversation. I love it. So I'm absolutely just drawing from her list of awesome ideas here. So this is not me being clever. This is all Lindsey, just so you know.
I'm so glad I did this too, because I have a little bit of winter break brain. So this helps me stay organized.
So we were heading into that collaboration area. Go right ahead.
Yeah. I mean, just bring the ideas to the staff. Like, I love seeing librarians say, "What do you need?" But I also, I have pause when I hear librarians just say, "What do you need?" I really want to see a solution-oriented approach. And it's my hope that the librarian will take time to look through the curriculum for each grade level and subject area, create a curriculum map if one does not exist already, so that the librarian just has that quick, at a glance, first 9 weeks, I know that 6th grade ELA is covering this, and then we go here. So just the librarian being knowledgeable and being able to come to the teacher and say, "I see that in the first 9 weeks, you're going to be covering this. Would you be open to bringing the class down for me to front load the different databases that we have or do an orientation? I could come to your classroom and front load the databases." But just bringing those ideas and solutions, because teachers are so busy. I mean, you as the librarian are busy, but let's make these conversations and these collaborative conversations, quick and efficient, and just save everyone time by coming prepared.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point too, in that if we as the school librarian are able to sort of look at this and say, okay, when I look at this, here's what I see, and I can bring this to the teacher. You're taking that mental load off of the teacher to have to figure out how can the teacher use you. And like, you want to be useful. You want to be part of what's going on in the classes. But when you put the onus on the teacher to figure it out, they may not know what you can do. They may not know what resources you have. Like, I've absolutely told teachers, I've told classes about something when they were in visiting, and the teacher go, "Wait, what? We have that?"
Yes.
They just don't always know. And so I think you're absolutely right to say, rather than making it that open question of what do you want or what can I do for you?
Yeah.
Turning it around and saying, here's what I can do for you, or here's an idea I have. Would that be useful? Because I can tell you, 9 out of 10 teachers, if you say, "Do you want me to do this thing that will help your lesson?" are going to say, "Oh, yes, please."
Exactly. Yeah, they want the help, and they just want to see specifically, what that's going to look like. And also, I see a lot of people at the beginning of the year create menus of services. And I think that's a really great tool, especially if maybe you're not given time at the beginning of the year, like during faculty meetings or site-based professional development days, to offer any sort of staff orientation or just information, but just creating that one pager, menu of services, introduce yourself, pop that in everyone's mailboxes, something that all used to work for me. And this is my preference. Like, I know that it is so important to set boundaries and time off. And I did enjoy my summer, but also I usually spent about a week of my own time in the summer getting my library ready, because I knew that when I walked in the doors of school, I was going to be bombarded with questions that usually start with, my laptop, it's not working. What do I need to do? And so I realized that I could not get my stuff done and that I just needed to be ready to go, because it was a great way to advocate, for the library. It was a great way for me to meet people and just be useful and helpful. Sometimes, yes, they needed specific library resources, but sometimes it might have been a brand new teacher who was given the keys to the classroom. They don't know how to plug. They don't know where anything goes or how to plug anything in. And so that was my service at the point of need for that individual at that time. Is that something I particularly enjoy doing, crawling around on the floor and plugging things in for someone? Absolutely not. But in that moment, that's what they needed from me. And that helped me sort of build a beginning relationship with them. And they will never forget that small act of kindness. Yes, my pants got dirty, but I made a new friend that day, and I made a new friend who may be open to working with me on an upcoming unit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had never heard it put as a menu until I think it was Courtney Pentland a couple of years ago had shared a menu that she had done for her students, and I was like, or for her teachers, and I was like, I've got to steal that.
Yeah.
But I did work with I got to observe a school librarian several years back, and her orientation box, she made this little tiny orientation box for all of the teachers, for all the new teachers. And it was just this little, it was paper, light cardboard. And each side of the cube, she had put together little facts about the library, or one side was, here's the databases we have. One side was, here's our catalog and how to get to it. One side was every side had information that was useful to the teachers. And she put a couple of pieces of candy inside. So everybody got this little candy treat, and then they had the box on their desk with the candy that also had the information, so they could just, what time are they open? Oh, that's right. It's right here on the, it was a physical object on their desk. I was like, so brilliant, so simple.
Yes.
But so brilliant,
Yes.
And it's not like she didn't do it every year, but when new teachers came in, hey, welcome, here's a thing for you. And so now all the teachers have this on their desk ready to go.
I love it.
Yeah.
Because sure, all that information is on the website, but what's a little bit more personable? Saying, go to our website and get all the information you need. Or, hey, I'm your librarian. Welcome to our school. Welcome back. Hope you had a great summer. Here's a little reminder of just basic information to help you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a great day. I love it.
I'm going to actually jump us over your next point and get us to communication, because we're talking about communication here. We're talking about how do we really touch base with our staff and our students. And so you've got some real specific and thoughtful ideas here. So why don't you share some? We talked a little bit about menus. You mentioned in here a menu. I get a menu for staff, menu for students. I can also see menu for families. That's interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Sometimes, families are new to the school. They may have a sixth grader. This is their first child to go through middle school. They may be new to the community. And so I think it is good PR to help families understand the role that the library plays in their students' education. And so I tried to often go to we had a PTO. So I know there's PTAs and all kinds of, different names.
We have a PSG.
PSG? I've not heard that one. Okay. So I would go to those meetings and just, say hello and introduce myself. get to know these families. And I also did the yearbook, so I was pretty good with everyone's names
Nice.
too. And I would be able to say, oh, you're Matt's mom. That's great. I love seeing Matt in the library. And just really putting that personal touch. I think it is important to show families that, your student not only has access to these resources during the day, but here's what we have online. Here are our databases. Here is if your child needs additional support with finding books, please set up a time with me and for your child to come and book shop. We can book shop before school. We can book shop after school. You are welcome to come along. I know we're in the age of, living through a little bit of challenges to intellectual freedom. So it's just something that's on parents' minds. So I think it helps them feel better sometimes in situations that they get to come along to and participate in the book shopping. I certainly welcome that.
Yeah.
I have noticed in our district, just in tracking like concerns about books, we typically get the most from a student's family who's like, they're in a grade level that's brand new to a school, kindergarten or sixth grade. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity just for openness and transparency and looking for any sort of way for the librarian to show, like, I'm your partner, I'm an ally in your child's education.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be supporting your child over the course of several years, not just for these next 10 months, but I get to see your child go from a sixth grader to an eighth grader, or from a freshman to an adult who can vote.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. And so I want to get to know your child. I want to get to know what you need for your child and how to best support your child. Helpful PR.
Yeah, that's such a cool idea. Again, not something that had occurred to me, but like even tying it back to what you were saying before about helping the parents understand, like, there are digital resources that the kid can take advantage of. We've got the audiobook of this, or, we've got the digital version if you want to see it, if you want to read with your kid at home. Like, so many ways that we can tie in all the different resources we have, our skills. I love the idea of inviting, because the parents tend to be so much more excited about getting their kids into books than the kids are sometimes. And so, if you send that home and say, I am happy to, help your kid find a book, parents can be like, oh, I'm dropping you off tomorrow at 7:15 and you're going to. So why not take advantage of that enthusiasm from the parent to help the kid find something that they're going to enjoy?
That's right. I have a former student who's now, he just graduated from college, but when he was in seventh grade, his mom came to me and just, he's really having trouble finding a book that he likes. He doesn't finish anything. So we set up a time for the student to meet me in the library to book shop. Found out that his favorite soft drink was a Coke. So I went to the teacher's lounge. I bought him a Coke. And he got to sip a Coke in the library and look for books. And he has never forgotten that.
Those are the kind of moments. Those are the ones that can really they stick in your mind. Man, you went out of your way to make this kid feel comfortable and to help him with what he wanted help with. And that is the thing that sticks with students. Man, that's awesome. Love that. I love that. Huh.
Yeah.
So you've also got many of orientation for new staff. That's a great idea too.
And sometimes that's possible and sometimes it's not. But sometimes brand new staff have more professional development that they are doing than other staff at the beginning of the year. So if the administrator is gathering those new teachers there for something, just ask if you could be a part of it. Could you host it in the library at least? And then that way you could have some information on the tables, because, we know that there's downtime. We know that there's awkward silence while we're waiting for things to begin. And here's a handy dandy one pager for you to read about the library. Or there may be a chance for you to, have lunch with them and just use it as an opportunity to get to know them and just build relationships. Even if it's not a time in which you're actively sharing information, maybe that would just open the door for you to do so. at
In my
another
head,
time.
you said when there are those, awkward pauses while something else is getting set up, just in my mind automatically flashed to imagine if you had some really like visually eye-catching books on the tables
Yes,
that the teachers could pick up, in whether they're new staff or returning staff.
right.
Like, even if they just flip through it a little bit, maybe you've just
Yes,
landed that little hook that's going to bring them back for some of those resources.
absolutely.
Oh boy, man, my brain is just fizzing with so many possibilities here. So many options. I love it. So are there any other key communication elements you think we should be kind of keeping in mind as we are trying to make people aware of, not just in the school, but maybe beyond the school too, of what we're able to do for them?
I think it's the things that I'm speaking about come from years of like trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think about somebody who may be listening to this, who's a brand new librarian, and go, gosh, that feels overwhelming. That's a lot to do and think about. And you may not even fully know your school community yet. I had 20 years to get to know
Yeah.
this community and watch it change and grow. And so I think things that I'm talking about kind of combine just your growing experience and expertise, what you learn year after year, what you're willing to try.
Mm-hmm.
It's, failure's hard sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts, and it's definitely nothing to be ashamed of. Like, good for you for putting yourself out there and trying an idea. And so for me, I take those moments and I reflect and go, well, did it truly not work, or does it just need a little bit more tweaking? We got to take it back to the drawing board and tweak. So don't be afraid to try. Good for you for doing so. And then look for what may work for your unique community, because like I said at the beginning, each and every school is different based on kind of the makeup of the staff and the students and the needs of the community as a whole. So do what you can with what you have, with what you're willing to do. And then just finally, your administrator is just so key to everything. And sometimes that relationship is built very easily, and sometimes that relationship can be difficult. It can take a long time to build, or it may not, for whatever reason, ever get built. There's a lot of reasons why.
Relationships are not a one-way street. And, even if you're doing the best to keep the road plowed, the other person may not be interested in keeping their side plowed. So you just got to, you can only do what you can do. But I'm really glad you brought that up. That's a really important point.
Yeah. So being flexible and trying to meet the needs of the students, is great, but also be sure, you've got principal buy-in for those things as well, because whatever you're doing, obviously it needs to be in the spirit of and in alignment with what the overall goals are for the school. And
absolutely.
Sometimes we know we're here to support literacy, but also there's the logistics that your principal is looking at, and sometimes those logistics can take some precedence. So just be sure that you're doing the best you can with what you have, and you're working with everybody in the spirit of being a team player.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad you brought up the fact that there may be people out there who have not done any of the stuff that we're talking about and are just like, holy smokes, so much. I know that I can be exhausting to people because I'm always just spinning out new ideas. Like I never even finish the first idea before I'm working on the second idea. And there's such a thing as too much, and I get it, and that's okay. And like you said, you shouldn't expect, nobody should expect that you're going to, if you're not doing any of this, that you're going to next week do all of this.
Right.
This is stuff that builds over time. This is stuff that builds over years. I mean, this is not something you're going to just tomorrow walk in and do all of. So
absolutely not.
I'm so glad you brought that up as just a point. Like, hey, if you are new, don't feel overwhelmed. Think about what sounded most interesting to you. Great. Try it out. See what happens. If it doesn't work out quite right, that doesn't mean it's not going to ever work. You just got to think about where did it go not quite right? Where did it go better? And work from there. But I really appreciate, I mean, again, I can see why your school librarians would be so excited to have you as a supervisor, as administrator, because you're really thinking about the bigger picture and not focused on the moment of well, this didn't work right the first time you tried it, therefore terrible.
Yeah.
No, it takes time. It takes effort. It takes thought. It's not going to all work out the first time. That's okay.
Yep. That's totally okay.
Yep. Well, there's so many great, we only got to about half of the things that you've got on your list here. It's amazing. I feel like we could probably talk about school libraries for the next 6 weeks and we would still have stuff to talk about. But we are now going to take a 90-degree turn. We're going to go into the book break.
Book break. Squiddy!
Yay, the book
I
break.
love the book break. So the book break, any book you want to share, whatever you've got, what is something you think people might want to know about?
Well, something that I had just the joy of reading recently was the Bletchley Riddle, and it is by Ruta, Sepetys, and Steve Sheinkin, and it's for middle grade and even high school, and it's historical fiction. Ruta Sepetys lives in Nashville, so it is lovely to run into Ruta around town. It's so fun to say that, and just previously as a librarian, I did have her come and speak to my school and to my students when she was a new author, and her book Between Shades of Grey just released. So, and that was back in 2013 that she visited my school. And likewise, many years later, I hosted Steve Sheinkin. And so when they were on book tour for this book, and they were coming through Nashville, and they asked me to be the moderator for their chat
How fun.
about the book. So it was just such an honor to support two authors for Kidlit that I dearly respect and admire, because so many of my students absolutely loved their books. But anyway, the Bletchley Riddle. In this book, it is in the summer of 1940. So we're in World War II. We're in England, and we have 19-year-old Jacob, who is just sort of a mathematical whiz, and he is working at Bletchley Park to kind of break codes of the secret messages that the Nazis were sending to try to interrupt and, figure out the plans that they were making. And then his younger sister Lizzie, joins him and also is living at Bletchley Park. And Jacob and Lizzie end up having specific roles to play in this whole code-breaking operation. And the true history of this is, because of that operation, it saved so many lives and kind of cut the war by about 2 years because of these efforts. But while all of this is super important and they're working really hard, the code that matters most to them is what happened to their mom. Where did she go?
Interesting.
Is she still alive? So it is told in alternating chapters. So Ruta writes in the voice of Lizzie, and Steve writes in the voice of Jacob. And it's just so cool to see how these two characters weave together and work together. And if you ever get a chance to read it, I hope you will.
That is on my list. My list is about 400 books long, but it's absolutely on my list. And I've got to imagine there's so many great nonfiction tie-ins to go with that, because Bletchley Park was a real code-breaking place during World War II. That much I know. And I might be wrong, but I think I'm remembering that there was a group of women specifically that were working at Bletchley Park as code breakers. They might have been called computers back at that time, actually. I think that's because they were the human people doing the computations of how to figure out some of the stuff.
That's right. And you'll even run into kind of a famous mathematician in the book. So your math teachers at school will be just wildly impressed.
Love it. Love it. Anytime we can get the math teachers in the library, that's always a good thing.
That's right.
Man. Well, that is definitely bumping up some spots on my list without a doubt, because that sounds awesome. And like you said, two amazing authors. So I can only imagine when they are working together how amazing that must be. Well, Lindsey, it has been such a great joy to have you here. Like I said, I feel like we could probably keep talking about this stuff for weeks and weeks, because you just have so many great insights and ideas that are helping me to see things in a little bit of a different way. And I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for being here and sharing.
Thank you again for having me. It's such an honor to talk with you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for the episode. They feature links to the resources shared by our guest, as well as ways to keep in touch with them, and links to the book break recommendations. And stop by the SLLN website, home to a curated list of free upcoming virtual events and resources for school librarians. It's easy to become a member of the School Librarian Learning Network. Just visit the site and use what you like. If you have a comment, an idea, a question, or something you want to share, you can email schoolliblearning@gmail.com. That's schoolliblearning@gmail.com. Know a school librarian with something others could learn from? Let us know. Until next time, be good, be safe, and be well.